Welcome to the Round Table. I'm Jennifer Eller, and with me today is my co-host, Mike Hill. I was waiting for you to smile.
Yeah.
And then our producer, Nick Wilson. And then our guests today are Cherish Johnson and Bella. Yay! Welcome. Oh, Bella, you're so sweet. You're
Thumbs
so
up,
sweet.
yeah. Oh, yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah.
You could do action.
Action.
Okay, I got a couple of questions I'm going to ask Mom, okay?
Okay.
So if you could take a trip anywhere, where would you take a trip to? Because I know you like to travel.
I do.
Yeah.
I do. And ever since COVID, unfortunately, I feel like I haven't been able to get out and go. Man, I would be happy with a trip anywhere at this point, but
I know, but dream a little. Come on, Cherish, you're a dreamer.
I am.
Okay, dream again.
I'm a big dreamer.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Maldives, probably.
Oh, Maldives or something?
Yeah, Maldives.
Okay, I'm like, I maybe saying it wrong.
No, I probably said it wrong.
Is that like in the Pacific? Islands in the Pacific?
Yeah, it's islands.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're a tropical.
Well, because I don't have infinite funds. I mean, I've done the Europe thing.
Yeah.
Gone to London, and it was fun. I got to go into the Palace gift shop and saw Big Ben, and I got to go to the Sherlock Holmes Museum.
Okay.
A lot of cool, fun stuff
Yeah.
there. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm a fan of going to the Outer Banks, North Carolina, and I'm a beach girl. I do enjoy the beach.
Ugh. I hate the beach.
Where do you want to go? Where would you go if you could go anywhere?
Somewhere that I haven't been or somewhere that I would go back to.
Yeah.
I would go back to Greece.
Ooh.
Greece and Rome were fascinating
Yeah.
from a biblical standpoint. So
Yeah.
I was fascinated, with that. And then I probably would like to go to Oregon or Idaho.
Oregon. I don't
That's
think
on
I've
my top
ever heard
list.
anyone say they would like to go to Oregon.
Yeah, I just think there's a
That's on,
part
like,
of
mine want to.
Isaac and Sherry went to Oregon because he's an Oregon Ducks fan.
Oh,
So they
okay.
went out there and watched a game and then traveled out through there, and I don't know, it looked pretty. So
Yeah.
I'm like I would go to out west that way.
Yeah, that would be
because I
fun.
haven't been up there, I haven't been to Idaho, so been to Montana and Wyoming, and
Here's a real question. Have you been to Canada?
I have
You have?
northern Manitoba.
Oh,
So
I've never been to Canada. I'm like, how do I live in northern Indiana and I haven't made it to Canada yet? I mean, you could just go through Michigan,
Windsor, like
right?
Windsor, like
Yeah.
Detroit
Yeah.
into Windsor.
I'm like, man, I'm failing at life.
yeah, but if you
Agreed.
want like true Canadian wilderness, I mean, you got to go pretty far up.
I want to go see a moose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you could
Let's
go do
plan that
that in
trip.
Maine. You could see a moose in Maine.
Oh, you can?
Yes, you can see a moose in Wyoming. Yeah, so you can see moose in a lot of places.
I feel like I'd believe in Wyoming, but it never occurred to me in Maine.
Oh, Maine has a lot of moose.
Oh, interesting.
So there you go. You can just do an out east tour. Have you done that yet?
Yeah, I've pretty much been up and down the East Coast.
Okay. Well, you
I just
obviously
haven't
didn't
been to
see any
Maine. I have not been
moose
to Maine,
while you're out
obviously.
there.
That's So what kind of books do you like to read? You said Sherlock Holmes. So do you like mysteries or?
Sometimes, but I'm trying to think.
Do you like to read?
I'm more of I used to read because of doing studies on a very regular basis, but I've gotten lazy with YouTube. It's like you can get everything at your fingertips. Like I'll listen to stuff while I'm doing my chores or whatever. And so,
So do you listen to books?
yeah, I'll listen.
Yeah,
What
that's
kind of book-
reading.
So,
But I don't count as reading.
so what
that
kind
right,
of books
Nick?
do you listen to? Not.
Yeah.
It's usually Christian type stuff or like personalities. I like to understand people because
Like autobiographies.
actually like psychology type books. Like once
Helter
you,
Skelter. I mean, you can understand the Charles Manson psychology.
No, I don't like going that dark.
I'm just saying you're saying psychology.
Well,
so
yeah,
I mean,
once you realize people don't think like you and are shaped differently. And I think the 5 love languages, reading that book, like that helped me see, okay, so if people love differently, I mean, everyone's different. We think differently. So understanding personality types, and I've always been someone intrigued by like trying to guess what personality type people are, and like the Myers-Briggs one.
So if you're guessing Jennifer, what would you guess?
Okay, extrovert.
Jennifer's personality, you'd say extrovert? Okay.
Yes. I don't know if she'd be a thinker or feeler, because you put a lot of thought into stuff, but I definitely see the feeling side of you. Oh, yeah. I think because I'm an ENFJ. So I
know what I am, but it's on my desk at the office.
Do you really know what you are?
I don't know. I had to take the Myers-Briggs.
now I
one
need to
time, but I don't remember what I am.
Did you ever take it?
No.
No?
No.
I think
I am not a...
He's not even on the chart. He is off the chart in his own thing up here.
Okay. So the reason being, Marcus Buckingham, a long time ago, you're supposed to be doing all those leadership things. And I'm like, God, I mean, do you really have to fit in a box? I don't even like boxes. I don't like rules. I don't like rules. I don't like boxes. I think that instead of like labeling somebody, I should just get to know you, like know your personality and how we work. But then, so then Nichelle got into this, what is it called?
Enneagram.
The Enneagram. And we all had numbers or letters. Or,
numbers.
Was that what we were? So we'd be sitting in a meeting and be like, oh, well, we know how Mike's going to react. He's an 8 or whatever. I don't remember what I was, but it was something like that. Like we already know how he's going to respond because he is a something. So
I went through a leadership book phase. So I enjoyed it, though. I like
it's probably great things to have an idea, but I'm like, if we do the really hard, deep relational work, I should probably know and understand how to lead you anyway.
Oh, yeah.
So I probably don't need to know your EFBJ, TJ. ENFJ thing. So if I just get to know you over time, I'll try to lead you well.
Okay. Sounds like a plan.
No, I think it's a good thing, but yeah, sorry. That's just not So everybody else would guess what I am,
Keeping it real.
but I've never taken it.
I didn't expect that out of you.
What?
Keeping it real.
Do you remember my number, Nick?
I think you were a 1-wing 8.
1-wing 8. See, that's what I'm saying.
Is that funny, Bella?
You are a 1-wing 8. You're that guy. Sorry about the subject.
Funny. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
those were tough questions.
They are. So we'll just get into your story now. So
okay.
So you have a lot. It starts with your childhood.
Yeah.
A lot of trauma and
yeah, you could say that, definitely.
You could say that.
I've been through a few trials. Yeah, it's interesting. Like in high school for graduation, my church family, they put up pictures of everybody and ask you for your life verse. And mine was Romans 5:3-5. Not only so, but we rejoice in our suffering, because suffering
That was your life verse?
Yeah, produces perseverance character, and character hope.
Wow.
And hope doesn't disappoint us because of the Holy Spirit, whom we've been given. And I wish I picked a different verse.
Because at that point, because obviously I remember parts of your story, I don't remember it all. But in high school, did you have a lot of suffering, or was that just more of what came later? Because I know a lot of what came later was...
Okay, I grew up in Warsaw, Indiana, Winona Lake, Warsaw, Indiana. Small town life. And I started out my early years in Shamrock Trailer Park with my parents. And my dad, he's a very hardworking individual. Like there were a lot of times he had like 3 jobs to provide for our family. And my mom stayed home with my brother and I. And my parents, because they got married so early on, my dad was Army and stuff, and he was, prior to enlisting, they decided to get married. So they had kids early, and they missed out on that, like, college phase. Well, they decided to not miss out on it, and so...
While they had kids.
While they had kids. Yeah. So, I'm like in first grade, like 7 years old. My parents are going out to the bars till like 1 o'clock in the morning. And I'm, watching a movie, and I have my popcorn, and, they're going to pay me $1 to babysit. And my 4-year-old brother's in the other room, and I remember in the beginning, it was so terrifying, like being left alone. And like, all of a sudden, it's kind of like man up, like you have to grow up really fast. Right. And I wish they were funny drinkers, but they turned out to be violent, very violent. It got to a point where the police were out at our house pretty much every weekend, which, I mean, looking back at the amount of violence I endured and like how unsafe the environment was. They were friends with police officers there. So, and they'd partied with some of the police officers there. But it just amazes me that like we ended up not getting pulled out of that environment. Like we were stuck there. But yeah, it was very abusive. I mean, my brother a lot of times was in his room and stuff, and I had to shield him from a lot of that. And I thought it was normal. Like when you start off that young, like with parents going out on the weekends, and then it turns into drinking every day, and you don't know what you're coming home to. Like sometimes I would come home from school and everything was fine and normal. And then there was other times I'd come home and it's just like, why is mom unconscious on the floor? And like it's crazy stuff. Like I remember one Mother's Day, I woke up to get ready to go to church and everything. And I come out, my dad's passed out on the floor with the phone off the hook. And like my mom's nowhere to be found. It's Mother's Day. Where's my mom? She was in jail. She was in the drunk tank. So, and here's the thing, like our church family, like a lot of people didn't know because my dad worked so hard. They put me in these pageants. Like on the outside, they worked really hard to make everything look good. But on the inside, it was chaos.
Were they taking you to church? I can't remember what you said.
Yeah. So
you
like,
guys were going.
My biological mom, she was adopted. And my biological grandmother is a prostitute. So like my biological mom has like 13 siblings. I feel like I'm a Bible story or something. Like it's kind of crazy. But yeah, so like she had a really colorful upbringing where it was, she was molested and stuff as a young girl. And then she was put in a family that loved her greatly, but it was a totally different environment, very conservative, like didn't own a telephone, didn't go to movies, like their whole focus was Jesus. Right. And so it was a little suffocating for her and confusing, obviously. So she had a colorful background, and then my biological dad, he came from a large family, and his dad was a trucker, and he's also struggled with drinking. So it was something my dad saw, and I think just thought was normal, maybe. Right.
But they were taking you to church, so that's kind of leading through all of that. They were taking you to church, and then were they out of, because when you say biological, so I'm assuming somewhere in the story, mom and dad are not a part of it.
Yeah.
So does that happen in high school?
Praise God for my adopted grandparents. They kind of made my parents toe the line. Like there were expectations. So even if they reeked like liquor, we were still going to church on Sunday. Right. And I am eternally grateful for my grandparents' influence in my parents' life because that brought me to Jesus at a very early age, and I needed Jesus because even at a young age, even in elementary school, I didn't want to live. I just didn't. It was hard. Life was really hard and stressful, and like I was always threatened by them, like to not tell people what was going on, or whenever they would end up in jail and stuff. So like there was always this threat going on and high anxiety. But so I got heavily involved in the youth group at my church, and I would always, like on the weekends, try to make sure my brother went to a friend's house so that I could do youth group activities and stuff. And my freshman year, there was a knockdown, drag-out fight. Like, my dad was bashing my mom's head on the kitchen floor, and there's butcher knives, and I got thrown down the stairs and strangled at one point. Like, it was really intense, and I basically was able to kick my dad away and like curse him out, and I got the keys to the car and got my brother and finally coerced my mom out there to leave. So like I'm 14 driving a car that I don't know how to drive in the dark, trying just to get to a safe place. And then so we stayed, I believe we stayed at my grandparents' house that night, and that's kind of when they started to see things were going on. And so eventually, like the next day, we went back to the house so I could get a change of clothes and go to school and everything. And I went on the youth retreat, so I didn't see my dad up until that point. And that weekend, like, was really, whenever I could be away from home was such a relief for me. And the last night of the youth retreat, they said, you know, if you have anything you need to work out with someone or correct or apologize for, do it now, or commit to doing it right when you get home, or don't take communion. And I was like, I was reminded of the harsh words I said to my dad, even though he probably didn't even remember them because of the drinking and everything. And I did actually that night pray that God would just take him home. That was another thing that happened, was I prayed for God to take him home. It was a plea, like, I can't do this anymore. And came home from the church retreat, and no one was home when I got home. And so I just kind of waited. I was tired, so I laid down on the couch, and not even 10 minutes later, my mom came running in, and she was yelling, and I was like, what's going on? And she's like, I have to call the police. Dad's been in an accident. He hit a tree. And I'm like, how are you here? What? But they had gone to the mechanic and were driving separate vehicles, and he went head on into a tree, and it smashed the car like an accordion. It was supposed to be my car. Like, they had bought it with the intention of me driving it when I turned 15. And she insisted that I go out to try to see him. And so I went out, ran to the end of the road, and I couldn't see, but there was something that just kind of came over me, and I knew he was gone. And I knew I didn't want to see that. And so I started to walk back to the house, and I told her I couldn't, I didn't see where the accident was. And had I gone a few more feet, I would have seen everything. But the police came, and my mom insisted on driving by the accident. So I'll forever have that in my mind. But it was, that was a really big life-changing moment. I thought things would get better. Like, I hate to say I felt a sense of relief in the moment, because I thought the chaos would simmer down. Things only got worse. My mom went from alcohol then to other substances, and started bringing strange men into the home that were rough. And it just wasn't a safe environment. And Yeah, it was hard. So I was beginning to feel the guilt of praying a prayer that my dad would die, and then I just felt lost. Like, even though I was going to church and everything, like, it was really hard. Like, there was I was always felt like an oddball anyways, because once you start spending the night at friends' homes, you realize your family is different. And knowing, like, I avoided having friends over because I didn't want, like, even just riding, my parents always had a Pepsi with rum in it, even driving, like, I just never wanted to put my friends in that kind of danger, even though I did have friends over occasionally. But yeah, so from there, God opened doors through my youth group. One of my youth workers worked in the special needs classroom at school, at the high school. And my locker was right next to the special needs classroom. And I didn't know it, but another church member also worked in that classroom. And she started asking questions about me because she heard my story and everything and what I was going through. And knew Rhonda worked with the youth group and everything. And so she just started to observe me. And I would interact with the special needs kids and stuff. And long story short, they invited me on well, my mom, I should back up. There was a period of time where I kept trying to, my mom stopped going to church, and I kept trying to give her Bible verses, and never went well. Long story short, she decided I would be better off at my grandparents' house since I was shoving Jesus down her throat. And so I got to experience what it was like to go to bed at like 7:30 in the evening.
And she let your brother stay with her.
Yes.
Yes. So
he
you
was
had
her
a
favorite. And so that gave me anxiety too, because I wasn't able to look out for him. And I started selling chicken barbecue tickets as a fundraiser in the neighborhood. And I met this couple, this really sweet couple that invited me over for lunch because they heard about my story. Small town. Word gets around. Right. And they both lost their spouses in car accidents. So, like, God put me just a few doors down from this couple that understood the pain and grief I was kind of going through. And they asked, hey, we have to return so-and-so's dog. Do you want to come with us? And I was like, sure. Like, I was okay with, yeah, I was looking for something to do. So sure, I'll go with you. And it was a woman that had been observing me, watching me from the classroom, and that God had put me on her heart. And she explains all this. She's like, I've been praying for you. And, do you need a place to stay? Because she knew where I was staying and everything. She's like, your grandparents are kind of strict. And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, well, you can come on vacation with us this summer. We can try it out, see if we're a good fit. And like, it was so funny because she turned to her husband and was just like, what do you think? Are you okay with it? Like, there was no like, we'll get back to you. Like, it was just in the moment, like put him on the spot like that. And man, my heart was full of so much joy. I was so excited at the possibility of like having a normal life or a chance. Because at that point, like, I wanted to go to college, but I didn't see how that was even going to be feasible. And I mean, I had a mom that was completely checked out. I was kind of homeless in a way, didn't know what my future held. And I went on vacation with them. And then I ended up staying longer because it was going well. And then my mom learned about, I needed to be in the home if she's going to collect these Social Security checks on me. So she was demanding that I come back. We're all just crying, taking me back there. And I'm like, God, what are you doing? Like, and it wasn't much longer before she signed me over to them. Mm-hmm. And then my brother was removed and went through the foster care system. Unfortunately, I wanted him to come with us, but the family that took me in, they knew I was going to be a handful enough. I can't imagine why. I mean, and yeah, so yeah, having your father pass away your freshman year of high school can make you a little different and kind of, I don't know.
Yeah.
Change you.
Right. So once you got to high school, then did you go on to college? Like what?
Yeah, I ended up going to Grace College,
Okay.
and some other colleges as I moved around the U.S. and stuff. But yeah.
Because is that where you met your future husband?
Yeah, I met him at Grace.
You did. Okay.
Yeah. Well, actually, he was. I met him on my college visit day because he was already attending.
Okay.
Yeah, and I had gone on a summer-long mission trip called Operation Barnabas, and met a lot of amazing people. You know, like when you bond with people for a couple of months, like doing sweaty ministry, like.
Right.
So they were all going to Grace College, and that's where I ended up. And yeah, so.
Because he was in the ministry program?
He was youth pastor.
Yeah.
So youth ministry. And that's what I basically went to Grace College to get my MRS degree. Yeah. If I'm being honest, yeah. I just wanted to be a homemaker.
I'm like, does that mean being married? You want to be a Mrs.? Mrs. I'm thinking,
yes,
MRS
that's what
degree.
they called it, the MRS degree.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I was in elementary education, and long story short, he was a senior graduating and was like, I'm going out to California for an internship. Either you're coming with me and we're getting married and you're coming with me, or, you know, we need to break up. And I was like, okay.
And you were a freshman?
Yeah.
When that happened? Okay.
You know, so.
Robbing the cradle.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. Doing good. All right. Yeah. So we got to spend a year out in Long Beach. That was extremely stretching because that's like a different world out there. Totally. There's nothing to describe. Like we were praying outside of like Rocky Horror Picture Flicks, doing like prayer walks around there with ministry teams. We were meeting with vampires and sharing the gospel. Yeah. Like people would get prosthetic teeth and only come out at night and be vampires.
Only happens in California.
Wowzers.
Yeah, so it's unbelievable. Like I was so innocent and naive, like small town girl going to LA. They saw me as fresh meat. Like it was, and I was working in retail, and that was a whole nother environment. And yeah, but my favorite ministry was the homeless ministry on Sundays. We would pack up sack lunches and take it to a park. I don't think you can do that nowadays, but back then we could do that. And there'd be a sermon and we'd get to interact with the homeless. And that was where my heart was. Like, I just wanted to love on these people and give them hope. Mm-hmm. So that was a big thing. I guess it's because I knew a certain amount of brokenness up until that point. Probably nothing compared to the roads they had walked, but like I wanted them to know there was hope. It's just ironic that like I would become later on hopeless with my walk and get to that point, and God used people to bring me back with hope. Right. So it's interesting the cycles you go through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think in your story, so you're at a place now where you take a big leap of faith. You know, you get married, right? So you're
too young to be married.
Yeah, a young married couple, and you guys go and you go out there on an internship, and then you guys go take over your first church, right? Where was that at?
Oh, so what led to that was I became pregnant.
Okay.
And I was a breadwinner because I was working full time while he did full time ministry. I was working full time at Macy's. So like me getting pregnant, and like it was horrible. I was sick all the time. Like, so he quickly realized, I need to start looking for a youth pastor position somewhere. And so we ended up in Sebring, Florida.
Yeah.
And that was an experience because the ministry we had been doing was pretty extreme. Like, it was out there. And then to transition into an older church that was definitely more conservative and quiet, with a small youth group. And we come in with our radical love and, accepting people, meeting people where they're at. Well, you start bringing in skateboarders and interesting characters, and you have more youth than you do, adults at the potlucks.
Right.
And teenagers, they're like locusts,
Right.
It starts to become a problem, and there were some other things that went on. And I will say, ministry's hard. Like, that was the most humbling experience, because this church voted on once a year if they were going to keep you or not. So I'm holding Isabel in my arms. She's a baby at this point. Traumatic birth, like, that's a whole nother story. She almost died. I almost died. Emergency C-section. That was a whole nother realm. So I have a special needs baby I'm holding in my arms, and we're standing up there, and they voted, and the pastor did the math, and by 1% we were voted out. Can you imagine? We have teenagers sobbing, like just crying. And I'm like in shock. Like, I'm just like, this is not happening. Does this ever happen? How is this happening? Like, it's most like so humiliating. And the story gets crazier. So we go home and we're like, what are we going to do at this point?
To come back to Warsaw.
Well,
Where's home?
Well, we went back to our apartment. We're talking.
Oh, God, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. And then the pastor calls back and goes, oh, I feel terrible, but if you knew the pastor, like, he was the sweetest guy. And like, his wife had just passed away, and like, it's understandable he made a math error. So we were actually still in by 1%. And my husband was like, that's okay. Well, we can read the room. We'll go.
The voting is
Wow.
the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
It's the way some churches do it, but it's
but you're making
hard.
an impact into the kingdom, but they don't like the way that you're making an impact
Right.
into the
It
kingdom.
was, it was an opportunity for conflict resolution, and but it strengthens you. So from there, we went to Maryland. Actually, we ended up in Annapolis, Maryland, and that was a larger church, but that was a totally different environment too. You're in a whole nother price bracket. It was just a different world, different culture, different set of rules, and you have to quickly, learn these things and try not to offend people in the process of getting your feet wet and getting in there and trying to do ministry. But I mean, with youth ministry, he just had a personality that could rub the mama bears wrong. So we saw a few churches during our time together, and they're all amazing. You meet amazing people along the way that impact you in incredible ways. And I mean, I'm grateful for the journey, even though every time we left a church, it felt like a divorce, and it was heartbreaking. Yeah. So.
I mean, did you ever get turned off to the church in those processes? I mean, because in those stories, right or wrong, I mean,
I would say
going from church to church to church.
The last church we were at, we then ended up staying with his family for a period of time, just to get some stability and everything. And I would say I was ready to not do ministry full time, but I say that, and I was the secretary of a church at the time.
Right.
But I did end up, that's when I transitioned into retail management. And yeah, from there, my husband, there was resentment that was growing and eating away at him.
To the church?
Yeah, that was unresolved. And it then spilled out into the family. And there was an incident that happened that I pretty much was, you can lose your children or you can stay married. And so I needed to prioritize my children in that situation. And when that happened, I became extremely angry at God. And I will say, if you get mad at God, do not sin in your anger because it just takes you down a harder road.
Yeah, and just, I mean, so for our audience, you're saying in your marriage situation, you were asked to choose your kids or your husband.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, you don't have to go into detail,
yeah.
but just so they understand that.
Yeah, it was. It was a decision where the state had become involved. So that was really extremely stressful time in my life. Yeah, so the whole divorce thing and everything going through all that whole process, like I was so mad at God, and I was like, I'm done. I just can't do this anymore. And I went through a rebellious phase. I just wanted an easier life. And I can't even comprehend what the disciples went through, like the intensity of everything they went through. And I'm looking back, I'm like, man, I was weak.
What was your support system then?
I was by myself pretty much out in Maryland. Right. And I met a successful man that worked for the government and was 10 years older than me, and kind of took us under his wing, and we became married. And he wasn't a believer, even though while we were dating, he got baptized and would go to church with me. I knew that it wasn't real. And he later, after taking a London trip and came back, told me that, I hope you're okay with this, but I don't really believe in the God thing anymore. Like, I'm more into the science stuff. And then, like, there was, like, this Freemason pamphlets and stuff. And I'm like, oh, good grief. Did he join, like, a cult? Like, that's not...
And at this point, you're going to Mariners, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or no?
Well,
no.
No, I joined a church plant at that point. Like,
Right.
I was helping out with the church plant.
Okay. So that's where he was going with you at the time.
Actually, no, I was at a Baptist church at that time.
Okay.
I've seen a few churches.
Yeah.
Yeah, but and then we ended up moving to Florida, and I had more of a secular life during that time. He was an astrophysicist and was on a few TV shows and stuff, and was pretty popular, and had a lot of conferences that he would go and speak at and different things. And I did some modeling down in Florida during that time, and continued on working in retail, and was raising the girls, and yeah, life was going until it wasn't. Yeah, I told you when I first met you, I was like, hi, I'm your Mary Magdalene of the church. Yeah, because I remember, I told you how when I was a little girl, I judged her when I heard that story. I'm like, how the heck did someone get married 5 times? And why would Jesus go to her first of all people? Like,
Right.
Like, I judged her so hard. And like, I feel like my life has been one of those lives of like God gently, well, not so gently, didn't feel gentle at the time, but showing me like life can happen. And sometimes you don't have control
Right.
over what the heck is happening to you.
Right.
Yeah. And so fast forward, I'm on marriage number 4.
Yeah, but when you're down there, so then he just decides one day, like, I don't, because one of your husbands decides one day he just doesn't want to be married.
That was the last one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't mean that bad. I'm just going through trying to remember. One of them was like you said, oh, I just.
The second one, he was a bachelor up until the point he had met us and never wanted to get married.
Okay.
But then it just kind of happened where we'd been together for a few years, and he did randomly. The way he proposed was really random. I don't know if there was more to that. Yeah. Sometimes I wonder if we were like a cover or something because he worked for government agencies.
Yeah. Like he was in the secret stuff and you were just the fake wife.
I don't know.
Hey, conspiracy theory.
Literally, my life has been so crazy. It's not too far off to like.
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised. Let's just put it that way.
Right.
Yeah. No, the last one.
Because again, so you're down in Florida. This guy decides.
He decides I miss my bachelor life.
Right.
Really.
So
that's ultimately what it was.
So now you're down in Florida.
But we left like it was the easiest.
Okay.
Not that divorce is easy, but it was the easiest divorce. Like it was the most respectful one. Then so I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Right.
Because my daughter Emma, my youngest daughter, she was struggling with some stuff. And I knew a lot of it was culture from being in the Tampa, Florida area. And I thought it would benefit her to go to the high school that I went to. But in order to do that, I'm wearing a scarlet letter, going back to my small town and having 2 divorces under my belt was going to be extremely humbling for me. And it was. It was. I already knew. I was just like, I'm just going to have to own it. It is what it is. The people that will love me, and the people that want to talk about me will talk about me. It's just a fact of life. Like, it is what it is. So I decided to pour myself into working and just making sure the kids got a good schooling and had no intention of being with anyone else. And
back in Warsaw.
Right. And a guy came in with his daughter to get her ears pierced. And I was working 12-hour days at that point. And because I had just taken over a store where the staff had walked out. And I was rebuilding it from the ground up. And so they were bringing me coffee and meals and muffins and, just constantly stopping in and asked me to go to lunch. And I did. And I remember the whole time I'm like, you do not want to be with me. Like, I am a train wreck. It was one of those conversations of like, here's all the reasons you don't want to be with me. Like, I have the worst luck in the world. Like, people in this community are not going to like that you're with me. Like, I threw everything at him to try to just shoo him away. Like, this is not a good idea. But, that one was supposed to be blended and blessed. And that one was blended and bonkers. Like the kids didn't blend. It was a train wreck, everything. It was a lot of work. And I worked really hard at that marriage just because like, I didn't want another failure under my belt. And he obviously could see it wasn't working out. There was some other stuff that happened behind the scenes that I just don't even want to get into, just out of respect. But he pretty much, I was blindsided. Right. I was handed a letter. He walked out. I read the letter and I'm like, what the?
Yeah. Wow. And you're not, at this point, back in the church, not in the church. Like, where are you at with your faith?
I was in the church. It was like every time I was trying. Yeah. But it was definitely me trying on my efforts.
Sure.
I mean, I trusted God. I was listening to podcasts. I was going to, small group. And it was just like nothing was working. Like I felt like a square peg trying to be fit into a round hole. And it's like nothing I could do was right. Nothing was working. And my kids were miserable. Like all the kids were miserable. Like it just was a train wreck.
Right.
But in my mind, I was like, we kept watching Jimmy Evans. He was at Gateway Church at the time, but he does marriage counseling online and like for blended families. It's called Exo Marriage now. And so I was like, you know, trying to go through these series with my husband and everything. And I thought we were going to get through it. Like it was just, and I was so sick. I was constantly, it was killing my immune system when you have that much stress with family not going well. Right. It really can take a hit on, it was during COVID and
right.
Yeah. So I had no idea what I was going to do next with my life. Like I was just like, what in the world? Like, so he decides to walk out. I don't tell Emma because during the time it was winter and he would plow snow and stuff. So I don't even tell her because I'm just praying to God he changes his mind and Emma doesn't have to go through another dad rejecting her essentially. Like that's only what I could imagine. And so I don't tell her for like a month, and then like she comes home from school crying one day because she got a text message from him during school. I was like, oh man. So, but I ended up deciding to get a motor home and travel. I was like, I'm going to turn lemons into lemonade. I'm going to go see the United States and Bella's going to come with me. Because I couldn't exactly go to work with the situation I was in with Bella at that time. And long story short, I'm a week or two into, and I'm close by at that point, and I had a heart attack.
Wow.
So I can't. I'm sorry. I mean, again, the first time I heard you tell the story, I'm like, like it's a book. There's so many levels of, to what you've been through to where you are today.
And the crazy thing was, I was like, I'm not going to send my anger this time. Like, I was so heartbroken and I was still praying so hard over everything. Right. And like, it was just, there was a lot of messed up stuff going on. And, So, that story was a fun one because Isabel had just woken up. She is butt naked in the bathroom because I was about to get her ready. And I could feel numbness going up my legs, up my arms, and like my heart is racing. And I'm thinking I'm having like an anxiety attack or something. And I'm like, I'm trying to sit and breathe through it. And I'm like, what is going on? And I had met some dispatch people, a couple of RVs over, because I figured I'm traveling alone and I have Bella, so it'd probably be good to meet people. Mm-hmm. I mean, I am so bashful and all, and shy. Right. But thank God I did. I walked like a dinosaur in my pajamas over to like part of my mouth wasn't working, and I'm just like knocking, and they're looking out the window and they're like, what? And barely can talk, and they sit me down, and the fastest I've ever seen an ambulance get to a location before. And like the EMTs, like they're like, what in the world? Like I can't move anything. Everything's frozen. And they get me in there and they're like, okay, we're going to give you a shot of this stuff. And like, you know, it's good. It should get your heart back into rhythm and stuff. And it doesn't. Then they do it again and it doesn't. And they're looking at each other and they're like, have you ever seen this before? And I'm like, I'm going to die. I'm dying. And then I was like, is that really the worst thing?
It's like the story of your life. Have you ever seen anything like this before?
Yeah. So like, I'm like, oh my gosh. And meanwhile, I'm like, because I was able to communicate Isabel's, because they knew it. And I'm like, she's naked in the, you know, camper. It was a husband-wife situation. So I trusted the wife. Okay, so meanwhile, while they're taking me to the hospital, I had given them the only phone number I had memorized was my recently ex-husband. So I was like, try to get a hold of him to get the sister's phone number. So she's trying to get a hold of him. She gets a hold of him, and he's like, I'm not married to her anymore. And she's like, no. I need the sister's phone number. Or, well, first she asked if he would come over and sit with Isabel until her sister could pick her up.
Right.
I'm not married to her anymore. Like, that's what, I guess what he kept saying. Yeah. And she said, okay, well, can I just get, her phone number? So she gets the phone number. Emma had worked really late that night. It took apparently like 15 times of calling her to finally get her to pick up the phone. And the police officer that was sitting with Isabel was ready to send her to social services, which would have been a whole nother headache for me to have to unravel.
Right.
So then Emma comes with Isabel to the hospital, and they're running all these tests on me, and they usher them in, and I did not want them seeing me that way. And please don't die. I have no one. Like, she was just like, I'm like, oh, I feel so bad I ever even had kids because of the life they've had to like endure just being my children. Like, I'm a train wreck. So anyways, the doctors are like, no, you're not having a heart attack, but we're running the test. Then the test came back. I had a heart attack. And so like, they're taking me up to ICU, and I just put out like, please, pray for my children and encourage them or something. Like, it was a plea to the community. Like, I just saw my daughter like crumbling into a million pieces and like is terrified. Just like, someone please like love them right now. And meanwhile, they're taking my insurance and everything seems to go through fine. So I go through these procedures. I'm in ICU for a few days. People start to come visit, but they're just like, oh, people think you're faking it. Like, while I'm sitting there in ICU, and I'm like, how do you like fake a heart attack and you're in ICU for a few, like, it's just like ridiculous stuff like that. And I'm just like, whatever. And, then like, so have the heart cath and all this stuff done. And, I started getting phone calls like a week or two later, and they're just like, we're having issues all of a sudden with your insurance. Well, as soon as somebody got the phone call that I was in the hospital, my insurance then, that moment, was canceled. So now I have like $35,000 in debt of hospital bills. It's just me and Isabel in an RV. Yeah. I can no longer travel across country. Like, it was bananas. Like, I promise I'm not making this stuff up. Like, this is just my life. Like,
yeah, so how'd you end up down in Huntington, and how'd you end up at Life Church? Because we're already getting close to the end. So I want to kind of talk through how you got here and how you feel like God's using you now.
Yeah.
Because it is like, from where you are today, no one would guess that that's where you've come from.
Yeah, I realized that I had to stay close because of cardiologist appointments and everything. And ended up at Playmore campground up in like Bremen area. Okay. And ended up paying to stay there for the summer. And we got to know people there, and like there was a sense of community. And I met my current husband, and during that time period, and he really helped out with Isabel and just took care of me and looked after me and just was relentless in loving us and showing up. And then like his family took me in for a period of time. And then we started to look for a place, but we needed to stay close because of his boys they live in Warsaw, but we both knew Warsaw wasn't a good fit for us anymore. And so we found a home here, and I started praying, and I'd been really watching more and more of the online sermons and stuff, and just asking God, like, I know you're not done with me yet, but I mean, I'm a train wreck, so I need a church that can accept, like, I'm their Mary Magdalene and is willing to let me serve you, Lord. And like, just, I really missed and wanted a church family. And after being in the area for like 8 months, it's Christmas, and I was like, well, try another church out. So I came here one Sunday morning, and it was greeted with some beautiful smiles, and was escorted in to sit with a family. And, you know, from the worship to your teaching, like, I felt like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. I found the right, you know, spot. Like, I knew this is where God wanted me, and I was just so happy. Like, I was just so excited. Like, and honestly, like, it frustrates me that I haven't been here longer. Like, I wish I had been here years ago. Like, I know that this is where God wants me, and I'm just excited to be used. And like, I'd been praying, you know, that's become my prayer every day is, God, use me. Like, I don't know how he's going to use me, but just surrendering my will and being open to being used, and like asking God, just use me. Like, doesn't matter where, doesn't matter how, like, use me. Sometimes it's stuff that I'm just like, I really feel uncomfortable doing that, but okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like the free cycle. So let's talk about that, because you asked God, you know, use me, and then you had this idea that seemed kind of crazy, but it turned out to be amazing.
Yeah. So I saw a young boy in our community, and he was wearing high waters and had some holes in his shoes. And man, it kind of, you know, it broke me. Like, I was like, God, use me. Like, I don't know how can I aid in this? And then one Sunday morning, I was talking to Keely, and I was like, listen, I was like, God's given me this crazy idea, and it's kind of like a garage sale, but everything would be free. And she goes, a free cycle? I've done one of those before. And I was like, are you serious? I was like, so I'm not crazy. And she's like, no, they're really awesome. Like, it really helps families out. That, like, I was like, with the way the economy is, it's hitting our community. Like, you can see it. And I was like, I want to bless people. And I'm like, I'll put in the time. Like, I'll do whatever we have to do to make this happen. I don't exactly know what it's going to look like, but yeah. She's like, I'll bring it up to, you know, the church leadership, and I'll get back to you. And she got back to me, and she's like, hey, we got the green light. Let's do this. And I'm like, for real? And she's like, yeah. And so we started meeting and mapping out, like, what God was going to do with this. And, you know, like, I would have to say I didn't have too much anxiety about it, because I really was trusting God. It wasn't until the week of, on like day 1 and 2, I was like, are we going to get enough stuff to give to the community?
Enough stuff, yeah.
And then, like, the floodgates opened. It was awesome.
Well, I think so, you know, to kind of bring it all together, one of the things that I think is powerful for people to hear is that even though you have ran into lots of places where you feel like God should have intervened and rescued you.
Definitely a few.
Yeah, that's what I
God,
mean.
where are you moments?
Yeah, like, because there's a lot of people that have been in those places, and there's a couple ways to turn. I mean, like, when you feel like he's not there, there are some people just like, I'm done, like, I'm out. And you have decided to continue to fight and continue to battle and continue to come back, you know, to, you know.
Well, and I think my purpose, if you're watching this today and you feel like God can't use you because you've been through stuff and you don't feel good enough, because that's how I felt in my hometown.
Right.
I'm not good enough to serve God. I'm not clean enough. Oh, and it's not to say the whole community thought that of me, but that's the way I felt. And God has a plan for you. God wants to use you. That's the devil.
Right.
I gave the devil a seat at my table.
Yeah.
And I watched a sermon about that. Man, that was impactful. Don't give the devil a seat at your table. And probably the most impactful sermon I've ever heard was that whenever I'm reminded, it was by Lou Giglio, that's who it was. And, it's so true. Like, we're all broken. Even the people that look squeaky clean are broken people in some fashion. And I want to encourage you to get involved in your church. Find a ministry. There's plenty of ministry opportunities here. Yeah. The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few.
Well, and I think just to follow into, not only did you overcome that, I think that's great advice for people, because everybody is broken and everybody has a past, and everybody, don't let Satan keep you from that, because now then you step up and say, you know what, like, here's a need. How can I do it? And so you come and you talk, and then you go from, I don't know what it could be, to, it turned into an incredible, because I had my doubts. I was the one who said when they brought it to the meeting, I'm like, I'm not doing this. Well, who wants to have a junk sale and everybody's going to bring all their crap in, and we're going to have this great big dumpster,
I already knew.
Out back.
I already knew.
But this is what I said. And I think this is important for people to hear. But I trust that if God talked to you and if God's speaking to you, then even though it doesn't make sense to me, we're going to help you get it done. And God did amazing things, and the families that it's blessed. So the encouragement for people, like, listen, if you see a need, let us help you figure out how to meet the need.
Yeah. And don't stress over it.
Right.
Because if God's convicting the Holy Spirit in you that you see that need and something's supposed to be done, I didn't know how I was going to fix it. But God later spoke to me and gave me this wacky, crazy idea. And it was so amazing. I ended up being, it's so crazy. I spent an entire week of sorting clothing sizes and like sorting stuff. And, it was kind of backbreaking work, but it was so worth it. And every time, like, I'd end up by myself, 5 minutes later, God would bring people to help with sorting.
Right.
Like, it was a total God thing. So I'm outside greeting people, because every time I step inside on that Saturday, I started to tear up and cry. And I'm like, I can't be emotional in front of these people. But it was so awesome. We had like 300 and some people there. Yeah. And, but I got to see the people come in and I got to see the people come out. And there was this one woman, she's just hugging a toaster, toaster. She walks out and she's like, I am so grateful. She's like, it's been years since I've had a toaster. This toaster, she's like, I'm so grateful for it. Thank you. Yeah. And like, I was like, wow. And then getting to see the little kids, this little boy came out and he hops out and he has this Spider-Man backpack on. And he's like, look, I got a new backpack, like a new backpack. And the mom was like, I didn't have to say no. Like, the fact that everything was free and I could just let my kids get toys and like, and it reminded me of the Bible story of the feeding of the 5,000, because we didn't have a crazy amount of stuff left, but it felt like the 10 baskets that were left. And it was just like, there was even still stuff left. Yeah. But going into this, we were so worried. We're like, are there going to be fights? Like,
This is going to be like Walmart on Thanksgiving,
Black Friday,
whatever it's called. Yeah. Yeah.
And it was like, it was calm. People were so happy, like real joy. And then they were like, where's the flyers? And I was like, flyers for what? They're like, well, I want to come here tomorrow. And I was like, what's tomorrow? And I was like, oh yeah, Sunday. And I was like, oh, we didn't make any up because we wanted this to be no strings attached. We wanted to be Jesus. Like, we wanted to be love. We want to love our community and just say that, like, we love you.
Yeah.
That's awesome. what time can I come here tomorrow? You know, like I'm like, and then I'm greeting. Was I greeting or up in kids' church? I don't know. I was ministering somewhere. And then I came down like just before the service ended, and I saw one of the families that had been there that day, and it was their first Sunday. And that was like the Holy Spirit was just like, this is why we did this, there are people in this community that are looking for a church that will love on them and that they can be a part of and join this family. And I want to invite people into the family now.
Right.
Like, it was just such a cool experience. And like, I loved that we prayed ahead of time and we just asked Jesus. We welcomed him in. Right. We're like, and he showed up.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're just, again, as we wrap it up, first of all, we'll be praying for you as you continue to, because like I said, it's cool to see God rebuilding. I mean, I don't even know if that's the right word, but restoring
maybe
hope.
Establishing a foundation.
Yeah,
at
right.
This point.
Yeah, that they can be healthy and they can be supportive and they can be there for you, and that we can watch God continue to use you and to be a part of seeing that in your life. So that's super exciting. And if you're watching or listening, you guys come to second service, I think.
Oh, I'm here both services.
Okay. So you'll be able to see, Cherish around. So come up and say hi, and again, once this comes out on Facebook, make sure that you like, share, comment. And that way we can get it out on other people's feed. If you are listening, make sure that you go to our YouTube and you go on there and watch. And while you're there, go ahead and subscribe. But while you're watching, that way you can see Cherish and Bellis. That way you can come up and say hi and know who they are on a Sunday morning. So thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.